Good morning. I'm Daniel Sim, the VP of Product at Rewind. We do cloud backups, Jira, Confluence, and a bunch of other cloud SaaS products. I'm here today to talk about Atlassian Rovo Agents. So when it came out at the end of last year that the early access program was launched, I thought this is something I have to play with. I was really excited about the potential here. So I'm not going to talk to how we build one of those because we've had some great sessions so far and the docs are also really good. I'm going to focus on some of the pain I had building my Rovo agent and also some of the wins and gotchas along the way. I will touch really briefly on the different pieces of a Rovo agent, what they are, just so you have a bit of context here. But I'm going to spend most of the time focusing how to craft an effective prompt. And also talking about those wins and gotchas, these things that I spent hours and hours trying to get to work. I had that pain, so you don't have to. Just for a bit of context here, the two main pieces of a Rovo agent are the prompt, which is your natural language directions about how the agent should behave and respond, and actions. And these are forged functions that are available for the agent to call. A ton of docs, great example apps available from Atlassian, so great learning resources there. The first part is crafting an effective prompt. You're going to spend a lot of time doing this, banging your head against the wall sometimes and being, wow, that's fantastic as well. So we're going to look at my prompt. So I decided to build a pretty straightforward Rovo agent that takes a customer discovery interview transcript and synthesizes it into insights and opportunities. You can write your prompt however you want to. You can structure it as just a very simple paragraph. You can extend it very long. You can add some structure to it. There are no rules here. It's really about what people have found to be effective. And this example is one that I found to be really effective for something that's a multi-step agent. So it's not just a simple back and forth. It's a conversation. There are different paths, there are different tools, and there are different outcomes from the agent's behavior. You basically split it up into different sections here. You've got your role, your workflow, and your jobs and steps. So the role talks about who the agent should act as. In this case, it's an expert product manager that specializes in the ability to synthesize the transcript. I found that changing who this is, are you an expert product manager, are you an executive, are you a McKinsey consultant, it didn't really change its ability to complete the task. It changed how it communicated, whether it was super verbose, whether it was really casual in its use of language, or it was very formal. That's what was really influenced by this. So think about kind of the persona that you want your agent to embody. That'll craft how it should interact with the user here. And also just giving it a kind of a headline, this is why you exist. And if you think about it, like an agent starts with no understanding of where it is in the world. So you have to orient it like, where am I? I'm in a black box, like I don't understand what I can do here. So this was also really crucial, telling it that it exists within the context of Confluence text, some different parameters that it has access to, and also what it can do. It can delegate things, or it can it works within a certain context of the text it's given. This helps it understand what it can and can't do. It can't write an entirely new Forge app, for example. And then you round the role piece off with telling it how to interpret the rest of the prompt, the different instructions. Here, really, it's pretty simple. You can tell it, like, this is a section separated by dashes, and this is the name of the section. And then you get into the workflow. This is a set of sequential steps that almost all users will complete. So that's really important. You don't want to give it really, really complicated paths. You don't want to say, if the user responds in a certain way, go to step 15, and then go back to step 7 and 8. I found that to be very, very indicator of poor quality. The agent's going to get really quickly confused. So you should really count on your workflow being kind of the happy path. Someone can fall out of that, but they should complete all of the steps generally in sequential order. And you might have already noticed this, but in step 7, I said go to step 9. There is no step 9. And yet the agent still worked. So that's an indicator of like when you're telling it to do things, it's going to decide what it wants to do itself. So it's a general direction of the steps available. It might decide to do whatever it wants. And then you get into your jobs and steps. So in the workflow, you can refer to a particular job, and the job has steps. So you can kind of see it looks somewhat similar to the workflow. So why would you use a job versus doing something in the workflow? Well, this is where you can get into a little bit of branching. In my case, the agent could fetch a transcript from Zoom, or it could fetch it from the current Confluence page. And the Zoom job was different from the Confluence page job. And the workflow, as you could see in the previous step, was where that decision was taken, and then the agent called the different jobs. And what I learned was when you're in the job, skipping steps is unreliable. So again, go to step 5. That doesn't really work all the time, but aborting the job works well. So if you say, if this happens, go back to the workflow. So that worked really well. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about your branching and your control of flow logic in the agent here. So onto the good stuff. If you've done any kind of LLM work, you'll understand that you give the LLM some context. This is everything it has available to work from. In your case, it's the prompt that we've looked at. Also the available actions, that also goes into the context, and the entire conversation thread. So I got a bit carried away. I tried to get my agent to do all kinds of wonderful things, and then it just stopped working for like no reason that I could understand. Even things that were working perfectly fine before, it suddenly decided that it didn't want to do anymore. Very frustrating. And what it came down to was this context. The context had got extremely large. And due to the way that LLMs work, this was very, very confusing for it. It couldn't figure out what to pay attention to and what was most important in that context. So in my case, what I did was kind of rein my ambition back a bit more and limit the number of different steps and paths. So it wasn't able to jump around a lot. It had, as you can see there, kind of 2 main paths it could take. And then the second thing was keep large amounts of text and raw data out of the context. So initially what I was doing was taking the synthesized insights and opportunities and putting them directly into the Rovo chat on the side. As you can imagine, that's a large amount of text, and it's not really relevant to what the agent needs to do. It needs to refer to the insights and opportunities, but it doesn't really need to know it. So instead, I gave it an action to be able to get the content from the Confluence page, and I took all of that out of the context, and it only referred to it when it needed to. And similarly, with calling APIs, I think very much about the data that you want the agent to surface in the context. This was really cool. I kind of didn't really kind of expect this at all. But initially my agent was able to create a new Confluence page. That was it. It was given a simple action, create a Confluence page, page title, contents of the page. In one of the runs, it found that the page already existed, and it decided what it should do about that. In the first case, it decided to prompt me. It actually decided what it was going to do in terms of changing the name of the page. So it appended, as you can see, brackets 3, and it tried to create the page again. I didn't tell it to do that. I didn't give it an action to do that. It just reasoned it out. And in the second case, it came back to me and said, is this what you want me to do? And I said, yes, append this to the end of the page title. So think very deeply about where you want to give it some autonomy and some space to make these decisions. You don't need to code up all of these things, or you don't need to prompt or give it actions for all of these things. You get a lot of stuff for free. So I kind of went nuts on that, and I said, you can like call all these generic actions and you can do whatever you want. And it just fell flat on its face at that point. In my case, I gave it the Zoom API. I said, okay, this is the Zoom API. These are the parameters that you can use to call to get your list of transcripts from the API. And I'm just going to give you a raw API response back from it. That was a terrible idea. All I wanted from that response for this agent was maybe 2 or 3 fields. I wanted the name of the meeting. I wanted the ID. I wanted whether it had a transcript or not. Prompting it to say, just return the meetings with transcripts was terrible in this case because there's a lot of other stuff returned by the Zoom API, which was just irrelevant. Large context, poor quality. I reduced this down to just the fields it needed, and it worked perfectly. Here's a little game for us to play. Can anyone find the bug in my prompt here? So it needs to fetch a Zoom transcript, and it just wouldn't do it for me. It would skip at one particular step to give you a bit of a clue. Where's the bug? Choice of words. Can you act as an LLM and think which word could be wrong here? You win a prize. The admiration of your peers. Exactly. So it fell over on step 4 just because, like, I'm a human, I use different words to refer to the same things. It didn't know what content was. Like, it was expecting it to be transcript. I was consistent in calling it transcript. For whatever reason, step 4, I decided to call it content. Fix that, and it works. So when debugging, words really matter. I guess it took me a while to kind of realize that this was a possibility, but agents themselves can help us to make them better. So asking it, why didn't you call that action, or why aren't you doing what I want? It can point us in the right direction. Like, I would say it was not 100% foolproof, but it definitely gave pointers of potential areas where it wasn't able to, because it knows its own system prompt and it has the ability to scrutinize that as well. And the second point as well, if you add a new capability, this does pretty well actually. How can I improve your system prompt to do X? And the Rovo agent in the chat will spit something out, and it's a good starting point, much like a co-pilot in IDE. This is a big gotcha as well, especially for kind of the more powerful agents that can start to manipulate data. You can prompt some of this out, but you need to expect that your action is going to be wrongly called at some point. It's going to be called multiple times when it should be called once, or it isn't even called at all. And you need to code defensively for that. So think about the permissions. Of course, like we have the permission schemes available through Forge for us to use here, and limit the agent to what it can do, just as you would do for a user. The number 2 is to make actions idempotent. So you can expect that your action is going to be called. So if it's delete, let's say a Confluence page, you can expect it to try and delete the same page twice or something like that. So think about how you give it that understanding and make it idempotent. It doesn't fall over. I couldn't delete the page when it actually did. The way I did it in my case was, in the Confluence page, I gave it a certain, the expand macro. I said, this is the expand macro that you work within, and if it's empty, you haven't done your work to synthesize it, and so on. So it was able to understand through inference, like, okay, I've done the job that I needed to, versus just giving it a blank slate. And number 3, have a backup. Obviously, I come from Rewind, and we would love you to use our product, but make sure that you always have a way to go back to a previous state of whatever your agent could do, and make sure that's recoverable in some form. And I think this is the biggest win for me as I was going through. I'm a daily user of ChatGPT, and I love it. And yet I still spend most of my time in Atlassian products. I spend most of my time in Confluence and in Jira Product Discovery in my case. And I think this is a huge potential for us. This is where work gets done. I'm not an Atlassianer, so I'm not trying to sell you on that, but we do a lot of work in Atlassian. This is where we spend the most of our day. And bringing the power of LLMs and especially agents into Atlassian is going to be huge. Because you look at OpenAI, Anthropic, their editing experience is not that great. We've got Canvas that's came out for ChatGPT. It's a bit like this. They don't really have a concept of security or user permissions, all of these things. There's no collaboration in these tools. And I think that's where Atlassian shines. So if we can work together to build some Rovo agents, this is going to be great. This is going to be fantastic. And we have the foundational pieces. We have fantastic apps and products here that you all come from. Like this is the future of collaboration. I don't think it's ChatGPT. I think it's the Atlassian suite. Thank you for your time today.